Okay. So I just briefly wanted to highlight our coordinated enrollment playlist on our early learning division YouTube channel. I can show you what it looks like really quickly. I just popped the link into the chat as well, and it's also in the agenda that was sent out for this meeting. Can you all see that? It's not showing me what I'm screen sharing. Are you able to see the YouTube page?
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. I was like, now I've lost the ability to see videos too. So you'll notice it's under this coordinated enrollment. We've got the trainings that have been underway so far. And that link will take you to kind of this list so that we can keep adding to that and not having to send you individual links to keep track of anymore. So kudos to Erin for setting that up, and Lindsay as well. Appreciate having that resource. So in addition to the trainings that we'll continue to use here, we'll also start posting the cohort meetings there as well, so that you can go back and reference as needed in a little bit more of a succinct or like place, a list around specifically coordinated enrollment. So just wanted to make sure you all saw that, make sure you had the link for that, and we can keep circulating that link as a place to go for any resources you need there on YouTube, I should say. So super brief update there. Go ahead and come back to see you all. Any questions, any thoughts around that piece? Just want to make sure you knew it existed. Okay, fairly straightforward there. The next kind of update reflection piece I wanted to make sure to cover was around the family survey overview that we had from Catherine and our research colleagues earlier this week on Monday. So I think most of you were there looking at names and faces, but just to sort of share again, so we have now a family survey. The link is live from that site, and you should see an email shortly with the collection of that link to the family survey. As well as email language, if you'd like to use email to reach families and ask them to complete the survey. And then Catherine and team were also able to create kind of a short and condensed text message version with the link as well for those of you who are finding success texting families. To just quickly reiterate, this survey was developed by the research team in partnership with a work group of coordinated enrollment staff. We intend to, really just make it available and make it something that's useful for both you all to learn about how families' experiences are and think about how that might change or improve upon any processes you have. And then we're also using that to learn where there may be room for improvement in preschool promise policies, procedures, things that ELD has set in place. So really our intent is to be able to use this to do some continuous quality improvement around our programming and around coordinated enrollment generally. I think what I heard loud and clear from the research team is really like, we want this to be, useful to you. This is, your data. So with that in mind, if there are different ways that you'd like to distribute the survey, that you'd like to talk about or message the survey to families, please feel free to do that. That's definitely I think something you all know as being in much more regular contact with families, we trust obviously your expertise there to get that out. Um, and I think, I heard some interest in um, wanting to share this with partners, maybe Head Start OPKs, and see if they would be interested in distributing that as well. I would encourage you to take a look at the survey and the questions and see what makes sense. But certainly, it's a link that is available for you to distribute to families, through whatever channels and with whatever partners make sense to you. So definitely feel free to do that. Um, the survey will we're gonna check in on it. It sounds like it'll be up through at least the beginning of September. We may check about keeping it up longer depending on where you all feel you are in enrollments for Preschool Promise at that point in time, knowing we've got again some informational delays and maybe different family interest levels than we would have thought, not a complete bounce back to normal, if I may say. Yeah, but just want to be able to gauge and make sure that we're really getting family input and really having the time for that survey to be distributed and responded to. Um, let's see, for those who were there, would you add either anything to my update, or do you have any reflections or questions you'd like to share or talk through at this time? Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I have one question.
sure.
Um, so I know that we got information about the surveys, but for like we have a partner that's a Head Start and Preschool Promise. Do they also get the same information, or should we be relaying that to them?
So your choice. The survey was really intended for families that went through the coordinated enrollment process with you all at the hub. However, like if it feels like that would be something um, that your Head Start OPK colleagues would be interested in, would be helpful to your partnerships around coordinated enrollment, you can feel free to share it. But again, because it was kind of geared towards the coordinated enrollment process itself, they are not required or going to receive this from ELD, for example,
Okay.
as a piece. So again, if it's useful to you in that partnership piece, taking a look at the questions and seeing if they make sense, or maybe even just sharing with your partners if that makes sense. Like, we're going to be doing this. Is this something we should, you'd like to distribute or something? We definitely leave that to you and where you feel you are with your Head Start or OPK partners around some of those pieces. But really kind of focused on the Preschool Promise enrollment and the coordinated enrollment kind of process there. So it may or may not quite fit depending on how you're rolling things out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Any other questions? Cool. Well, like I said, you'll get a email from me probably this afternoon with the text that has the live survey link in it. It's also in the Google folder that was shared in advance of the family survey training or overview that we had on Monday. But I'll make sure we've got all that in one email for you all to access. And definitely look forward to hearing how you are distributing and then obviously what data we get back. Oh, just to also state for anyone who wasn't able to join us, families will also be entered in like a raffle for a gift card for their completion of the survey. There will be, let's see, there'll be at least one winner per hub region. And then there will also be like a statewide drawing of an additional 16 pieces. So we want to make sure that there's the chance to win in each hub region, and also recognize sort of the difference in each hub region in terms of number of families and things. So taking a 2 raffle approach to do that as well. Wonderful. So I really was hoping that most of our time, which it seems like it will, could be spent around kind of peer learning reflection time, knowing there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of interesting, exciting, and challenging work happening, or pieces coming together. I want to just have that time to have you all hear from each other, and do some consultation where it makes sense. So I did a bit of a spin on our kind of usual peer learning questions. What I thought I might do is share the first question, give us some time to think about our response, and then share out, and then move into a couple more questions. So the first one I'd like to hear your thoughts on is, given your work so far on coordinated enrollment, what do you feel best about? And I'll plug that in the chat for those who are more reflective readers. And how about I give about 3 minutes to think that through. So by my clock, it looks like we'll be right around 9:18 to do that. Just a few minutes to write something down or reflect on that, and then we'll come back together and share. All right, does anyone need a little more time? Nope. See, Antonia, today I'm just going by whether you nod or shake your head. Would anyone like to share what they feel best about? Also, feel free to use the chat if that's more comfortable for you.
I think in my case, and I may be one of the people that have been doing this, um, I'm one of the newer ones, I think. um, I think what I enjoy is the direct contact with families and being able to let them know that same way we're working with a person or a family in one city is the same way we're working with a family, I don't know, 50 miles away in another county. And being said throughout the state. So I feel that that helps families feel a little bit at ease that they're going to be treated with fairness, and then that they have someone that they can ask questions or talk to or reach out to if needed. So I think that's for me my um, I really enjoy being able to work with families directly. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That is a wonderful feeling. It's really nice to have that, like who we're working for when we do all our systems level work, and also having that ability to have that direct contact too. Oh, and I see Danny, big numbers here. We have 124 children enrolled today, and enough on the list for fall to fill in for those who are aging up, aging going to kindergarten. Wow, and compared to 6 months ago at 20, that's a huge increase. I can definitely see why you feel best about that. That's really wonderful to see. And Matt, I see as well. I like that we have simplified the process for families. So being able to accept the benefits letters as a form of income. Yeah, that's great to hear too. I'm sure so many folks who were here and experiencing last year are remembering the tracking of pay stubs, and a lot of relief at being able to ask for fewer documents, I'm sure. Oh, great. Christy says lots of new applications for the new program year as well. Glad to see that. Glad to hear that.
For at least me, I don't know, I can't speak for Michelle and Amy, but I think one of the things that I am happiest about is our relationship with our partners. We've started the actual collaboration and referral out to other agencies, and I feel like um, we have a good working relationship with our Head Start and some of our other programs, and so I feel like that is like a big chunk of it done. Was we already have that foundation, so we can now just work out the details of like what are the logistics to actually make it work, like how often do we need to meet, how do we meet, what do we talk about, just those little things. We have that foundation piece done.
That's so great. I mean, so much of this work is partnerships, right? So being able to rely on that firm front foundation is a great spot to be in. Absolutely there. Yeah. Oh, and I see Dulce says having clear guidance and feeling more confident with communicating with family is wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. Well, keep that going, hopefully, as we can with that clear guidance too. Anyone else care to share? Oh, wonderful, Maria. I like that. So a lot of resonance with Antonia and her experience, and then every day presenting a new challenge and figuring out daily daily which is the priority and which fires to put out. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I think we all become pretty good jugglers.
Oh, yes.
And just trying to memorize and remember where you were doing it right before you got the phone call or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say one thing I'm excited about, or one other thing I'm excited about, speaking from a director lens for the Early Learning Hub, I have 2 staff on this call. They've been the same consistent staff for quite some time. And I was just reviewing our online job posting, and I have 8 applications for the second position. So I'm ready to hire my second coordinated enrollment specialist, and to be almost fully staffed going into the upcoming program year is very exciting for me.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful. I know so many folks have really benefited from having that team. Danny, hallelujah. That's so great to hear. Absolutely. Well, I love hearing all these. If you have more, and maybe this will bleed into our next question too, please keep sharing those as well. The next is a bit of a two-parter. Knowing the question is, what are you excited about or worried about related to coordinated enrollment currently? And the reason is, sometimes an excitement can that between excitement and anxiety can sometimes be an interesting space to be in. Oh, great. Want to make sure having Olga join us has been the best. Awesome. Awesome. We're so glad to have you, Olga. New staff, new energy, and a perfect person to engage families. That's wonderful to hear. Wonderful, wonderful. So let's see, I will pop this next one in. My thought with this is that we could do a similar share out about excitements and worries about coordinated enrollment, and then see, where do we have similar experiences, and particularly, if there are common worries, how maybe have we thought about addressing, or where has each person's thoughts gone around kind of those worries, and are there some common areas or lessons to be learned or shared across that? So the question is in the chat for you all. I will give us maybe this time closer to 5 minutes. So I'll reconvene at 9:30 by my clock, and we'll do a little popcorn round of this as well. And All right. Thanks those of you top of mind putting them in the chat to kick us off. Um, I see, yeah, the first I think is probably shared amongst all of you programs not having contracts in place and potentially needing to close recently open summer programs. Yeah, yeah. Appreciate and I know how much you all hear from providers around their concerns and their, frustrations, anxiety around not having the contracts in place yet. Absolutely. I see not having bilingual bicultural centers in Central Oregon. It's a huge loss for the Spanish speaking community there. Yeah, absolutely. How do we learn from, look at what our system offers and where we still need to improve what's offered and what's responsive to families' needs and wants there too. Thanks, Dulce. New platform, School Mint, meeting looks like a whole host of coordinated enrollment needs, enrollment, selection, data collection, and reporting. That's great to hear. Great to hear you. Excitement there. Oh, Maria, I can I can totally feel your fear around that, around being concerned that something's dropped the ball and families not getting into a slot. We're doing the best we can. Like you said, good challenge, but a lot of worry that maybe you've forgotten something. Wonder how much that resonates with other folks. Just knowing there. And I see Antonia looking forward to a somewhat normal year. I like that phrasing. Something different than 2020. We'll see. Getting to know preschool promise providers better, and looking forward to eventually being full. Yeah. Oh, and Elena, same with School Mint. That's great. Getting it up and running this summer. Excuse me, this fall. Um, and preventing those midnight worries. I hope so too. And yeah, Melina, lots of excitement for the new platform. Oh, yeah, and a concern around families who might come in later in the process. So not being able to help them or that the opportunities, have been taken with that. And so definitely a struggle between, wanting to move on timelines, on enrollments, but also, wanting to make sure that the families you're trying to reach are being reached and are aware of and able to jump into that process, knowing that some may come in later. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else anyone like to share? Oh, these are fairly common. It sounds like very similar themes there. I wonder around some of those worries, in addition to maybe, new tracking systems or something, are there other ways that that folks find helpful in, dropping those midnight worries or trying to, track and keep organized, understanding. I mean, such a great commitment I see in wanting to make sure families are served and know of their opportunities and their options. Has the $1 million question, has anyone found a way to reduce their stress on that? Or, That's such a good point, Danny. I see stress makes it harder, so we do what we can every day. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an element of grace in that too, to say, we're doing, I think, in so much of setting up, systems and really trying to change or shift how things are done, um, there's a space of, we're gonna try to improve it, for this time. We're gonna keep working and improving upon it and being able to do do your little piece every day towards that goal. Yeah. Oh, Marie, I love that. Deep breathing exercise. Being glad it's not an operating room. Yes. There are definitely places with higher stakes too. And I totally appreciate, that the high stakes feeling that it can have in wanting to make sure families are served. Yeah. Definitely. Well, with our time we have, are there any other worries or challenges that folks would like to share and hear if others are experiencing or hear how others are addressing that? Definitely want to have time to make sure we're learning from each other where that's possible, or ask of me also. Happy to do that too.
Okay, Anne, I'm going to throw it out there. um, uh, it's a continued challenge, and while we have great partnerships with our Head Start OPK programs, we have one program who is severely under-enrolled, and their perception is that it is our fault because Preschool Promise is stealing all of their children. And as we look into expansion and trying to work together more closely on coordinated enrollment, that will continue to be a challenge for us.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. Is anyone else experiencing that? I know that's, yep, Danny saying you're not alone. True in Clackamas as well. Seeing some of those pieces. And Northwest, yep. Yeah. Yeah, I know those pieces around under enrollment coming in and, kind of to the back to normal question. It's what I've been hearing from you all is it's not exactly back to all the way normal. And, to acknowledge that for the Head Start, the federal grant parts, they now have a deadline in some ways. In January, they'll be expected to meet their enrollment quotas again. And so that may be adding and preventing some of that partnership piece in some places where there's a real fear around losing funding or losing slots to serve families in the community there. It is definitely, I think, an ongoing piece of the coordinated enrollment work. Some of the areas I think, we're trying to support that come around being a little more clear about what a coordinated enrollment implementation plan, looks like from a state level, some of the ELD vision around coordinated enrollment. But, at its core, it's incredibly relational, and it's, I think, hard um, when partners are coming from a fear space, and for, a good reason, in a area we don't necessarily have control over when it comes to federal requirements, and wanting to maintain those. I think some of the ways it can come across, I think, when it comes to conversations of like, well, just send eligible families our way or something like that, right? We know that what we're trying to do is really make a system that serves families with the choices they have. And so, in the short term, how does that look like informing, making sure that, families are informed of their options, that you're, sharing language and referring across one another across, all the available options. And it's a longer term question about how does our system address families' needs and preferences, and you know, those pieces can take a lot more time than sharing information or, doing that. So I think it is going to be kind of something that needs, continual close regional partnership like conversations where you can um, put the problems on the table and talk about the ways to address it. So I definitely I definitely hear that, and do not take that to mean, there should not be issues and that it's unusual. I think it's a very common competition feeling, and one we saw, when we looked at other places and states that were doing similar things, right? It's really hard to think um, collaboratively when it can feel like a competition piece. Does anyone have thoughts or something to share there too? It's yeah, I seeing that last chat, Danny, it always has to be one. It feels it feels sometimes like holding those spaces, holding those where the partnerships are challenged, is is a big part of working together on this work. Yeah. Any other thoughts or shares? I appreciate Christy you calling that out. I think, even as it's a perennial issue, I think it's important to keep centered on too. It's a big part of this work. Well, let's see. I'll take a temperature check here. Would it be helpful to use our last 15 minutes on our own to maybe get another cup of something to use our group name? Are there other areas or questions you'd like to explore as the group? Happy to do whatever will make the most of this time for you.
I have a question.
Sure.
In general, for summer services, do children qualify for the entire time? How can I ask this? If a child, let's say, enrolled, or does a child qualify for the entire time of summer if we start the process with them when at the beginning, per se, at the beginning of the time when the providers open their center for services, and eligibility is not determined per se until the end of the week? Do they qualify for the whole entire time, or is it just as we are doing, or is it the same rules as that we're doing enrollment for the regular school year, where it cannot be, in other words, it cannot be backdated?
Oh, okay. I think I see. I think the goal is that we're trying to have families' eligibility like done before they start services, wherever possible, so that we don't run into a situation. We found some of these last year where it's like the family started services, but then turns out to not be eligible, and have to find a way to either fund that child or that they can't continue with the promise. So our goals are that that is eligibility is done prior to.
Mhm.
That's the one area where that, could come up is one of our priority, selection groups is children who are already enrolled and attending. The goal with that is not that it's like a bypass of the process, but that it's trying to maintain if a child was attending as, say, a toddler and aging into a preschool space, that they have priority in order to stay with that provider if they chose to.
Mhm.
But there may be situations where the family's been paying privately or through some other means, and then they may be in services, and then you'd be conducting eligibility to see if they can stay for preschool promise and start kind of
Mhm.
promise services.
Mhm.
Um, but I think our intent or our goal would be that for most families that before they start with preschool promise, they've been found eligible for it. And I see,
Okay.
Christy, I see oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I took my phone off mute. I think one of the scenarios, and it's the one the latter one you're referring to, where we have providers that have children that are currently enrolled with them that have now aged into preschool promise, and as they're doing the application, it takes some time to get all their eligibility documentation, everything they need, and then certify them as eligible. And the providers are wanting to be able to backdate that so they don't have to bill the families. Is that kind of what you're thinking about, Antonia?
Yes, and also because yes, it is very much like that, where a family could have started being willing to, or as just enrolled in a program, even if it's just a summer program. And then they become preschool promise eligible. And
Mhm.
yes, and I guess my question was around, since the summer program is just a limited time, are they eligible for the whole time or just from when eligibility is determined?
That's a great in terms of when providers can get paid for it
Right.
and therefore not have to bill.
Mhm.
Let me make sure I circle back with my grants and operations team members just to make sure I have a solid answer for that. But I know the intent is, trying to keep continuity, wanting to, serve children with preschool promise that are eligible for preschool promise. Let me see what that could look like for a
Mhm.
date or making sure we've got that.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions or things coming up for folks currently?
I do. Sorry, my voice is kind of, the smoke is really getting to me here in Central Oregon. Um, my biggest concern is having, as I mentioned, the bicultural, bilingual school centers, and how can we make it more equitable for people of color to open centers like these? From, being a person of color, like if I wanted to open up a center, like what additional support systems would there be for people to kind of walk them through the process? Because when you talk about equity, there's people who have an advantage of opening a business where people who are maybe immigrants don't have all of the knowledge and resources. So I would really like to see something in the future where these things could be addressed so we can have more opportunities for children, because then that transfers to our kids being more successful in our education system, especially if there's people that can relate to within their preschool promise provider. So just a thought.
No, I mean, it's more than a thought. I think it's an entire theme around some of our work, right? Is how from different areas can we think about both supply building in terms of like how we bring more people into the field and make sure that we're really encouraging those who are reflective of the communities we're serving, to open centers, to open, different childcare opportunities. And then also, how do we, make sure with our publicly funded programs that that providers, again, super reflective of our priority populations, are able to be supported to both apply for and be successful in some of those programs. So that is, I think, such a big part of our work that we often see the kind of after the things have happened. Now what we're seeing is, we don't maybe have the best fits around what families are looking for out of our publicly funded programs and the providers that applied for and got awarded those spaces. So I feel like your question is one that's the or the thoughts you have are just kind of the sort of constant. How do we, we serve the families with what is currently available? How do we take that information about what their needs and wants are, in order to open up other available options? And how does that work? I think there's, I think one of the areas that will come up is, as we're talking about expansion, how does our, request for application or RFA process, change or create, more support for exactly those providers that are, primarily women of color who speak all kinds of languages reflective of the populations, in areas they're serving. How do we make sure that we have real access to those opportunities for those providers who, we know families are wanting when it comes to public funding?
Yeah, I asked this question because we, unfortunately, two of the centers here closed, and it impacted our families. And in particular, one family who is just, I mean, they're an amazing, beautiful family. And I've gotten to know them throughout the years. But she basically said, I don't want to return to this program if my child is not going to have someone who they can relate to. And so the good thing is, mom was able to move into our online preschool, which is the Upstart program, which, you know, given her all the options, Head Start, just all the options that we have, she felt that this would be a better fit for her. I just felt really bad because it's not like I could say, oh, well, this one closed, but there's this other one that offers this bilingual, bicultural component that you're seeking. So that was a huge loss, like I said, to our community. So I'm hoping that as we think about future providers, like how can we encourage people to open up these centers? How can we encourage people to want to be part of the education system, to continue pushing our kids to be authentically themselves and not having to be forced to learn English as their, second language, but continue to learn the preschool components in their own language. So that's a little bit of food for thought.
Oh, it totally is. And I think, speaking of those partnerships, really, really that regional partnership, how does, the CCR&R, support that too? I think learning so much about the family experience and what families need, how then, does that kind of continue in our, like, really, in some ways, very focused supply building to say, we know families want this, and we need to cultivate and support, folks into this field that are reflective of what families are wanting to. Oh, thank you, Maria. That's such a great example of that, having the experiences early and so personally too. Yeah, it's a lot to continue on. Yeah.
And we have a question.
Sure.
One of our providers who holds multiple slots and locations has said that they might be moving the location of their slots. Is there like an endpoint where they can't move them because we're trying to fill them?
That's a great question. I've actually heard that come up in another region as well of I think in that case, the provider wanting to open a new site and like reallocate their slots around, those sites. I've put that to program team to say, you know, what is our final site list and what is the date to do that? Because yeah, pointing out, it's like it's difficult to recruit for something if you don't know where it is just yet. Or
And
yeah,
we've done a lot of recruiting already, and we almost have the site filled.
I see.
And
Yeah,
now we're hearing that they might move it.
right.
So we're talking about displacing families who think they're in a program, who then might not be able to get into a program because
Mhm.
other programs are filling up. And so it's kind of like, we would like to know like sooner than later if like, what should we do? So I think it would be helpful for us if we knew that there was like a hard deadline, like this is the date. If they don't apply to move slots by that day, then they can't. So that way we can move forward, because we don't want to be put in a place where we're telling families you're in a slot and then, oh no, you're not, because we're the ones telling them, they're going to get mad at us.
Right, right. Yeah.
And this is a community that where we're trying to do outreach to a very migrant population. And
Mm,
so we don't want to be like, come trust us. Oh, by the way, nope, don't
right.
trust us.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally appreciate that. And how much, I'm curious how much the provider's aware of like how many families are already ready or already like signed up there too, because I'm sure that can't be. I mean, knowing your system, they probably have access to see, you know, exactly who, like how many they're working with and things, but it does feel like we needing to know that like we've got a solid set of which site and where it will be is really important for families and for expectation setting too. Yeah, I'll pass that your question along in the same combo that the other region had question as well. I think very related. Thanks for that. Well, I appreciate you all bringing the questions, asking those that are, you know, going to be those ongoing continual questions as well as the immediacy of a hard deadline needed. I think that's just so obviously a part of our coordinated enrollment work together. So just really appreciate the conversation we had today. Um, and just to quickly wrap up, you will see a family survey email from me this afternoon with all those resources links. And um, as more information comes out around sites or something, I'll make sure that all of us are made aware of it. And otherwise, please don't hesitate to reach out with the questions and emerging things coming up in your regions. I'm more than happy to try to direct and find answers to the things I can, and just continue. It's very helpful to hear from you all how, you know, our preschool promise program expansion or rollout or any piece around this is affecting communities and families directly. So really appreciate those of you who have shared those, and please continue to do so. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day today, and I'm sure I will be seeing you all very soon.
Thank you, Anne.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.